Who are you to talk to me like that? I am Belinda, the rich mom. I am not a poor mom like you. Mom, beat her very well. I will deal with her child myself. I will ensure I make her low life miserable. I won't allow them to rob their filthy lives on me.
The full story.
Callista, the daughter of a struggling single mother, carefully balanced a heavy bucket of water on her head as she made her way back to the small, makeshift shelter where she and her mother lived. Suddenly, Jessica, the daughter of a rich mom, strolled down the path with her maid, Vivian, walking beside her. Jessica was talking to her maid angrily when she accidentally bumped into Callista, causing some of the water to splash onto her clothes. Jessica's eyes widened with rage. What is wrong with you? Why would you pour your filthy water on me? She spat out, her voice dripping with disdain. Callista, trying to stay calm, looked at her apologetically. I'm sorry, but it wasn't me. You bumped into me, and that's why the water spilled, she explained softly. Jessica's anger only intensified. How dare you speak to me like that? She screamed, her voice rising with each word. I demand that you get down on your knees and apologize while the water is still on your head. If you don't, I swear, you'll regret ever stepping foot in this estate. Callista, trying her best to defuse the situation, kept her tone gentle, hoping to calm Jessica down. But the more she spoke, the louder and more aggressive Jessica became. Finally, seeing no way to reason with her, Callista decided to make peace. She carefully knelt down, the bucket still precariously balanced on her head, and muttered a quiet apology. Jessica, now satisfied, smirked and nodded. Good, now, as you can see, we are not on the same level. One of us doesn't belong here, and I'm sure you know exactly who that is. As she gloated, a white jeep began approaching them from the far end of the street. Jessica's demeanor changed slightly. You're lucky, she sneered. My mom is the one driving down. The car slowed to a stop near them, and Belinda, Jessica's wealthy and well-dressed mother, stepped out. Jessica, what is going on here? She asked, her sharp eyes scanning the scene. Vivian, the maid, who had been standing silently throughout the ordeal, spoke up timidly. Ma'am, Jessica and I were just on a walk when we accidentally. Jessica interrupted her furiously. Shut up, Vivian. Who gave you the right to explain my business to my mother? I'll deal with you later for this. Belinda sighed, her gaze shifting between her daughter and Callista. Her eyes narrowed as she took in the situation. Shaking her head slowly, she moved closer, her heels clicking on the pavement. Without a word, she approached Callista, who was still kneeling. Gently, she helped her to her feet. I'm so sorry about my daughter's behavior, Belinda said softly, brushing some dirt off Callista's skirt. Where are you heading with that heavy bucket of water? Callista, her voice trembling, pointed toward a nearby cluster of shacks. I live there with my mother. She's out collecting things from the waste bins down the street. Belinda's expression softened even further. She reached into her purse and pulled out a few bills, pressing them into Callista's hand. Here, take this. Please forgive Jessica for her behavior. We're truly sorry. Tears welled up in Callista's eyes, but she managed a nod of gratitude. Thank you, Mum. Belinda gave Callista a warm smile before turning back to her daughter, her expression hardening with disappointment. We'll talk about this later, Jessica, she said sternly, before walking Callista back to her small home. Once they arrived, Belinda gently helped her lower the heavy bucket of water from her head. Take care, dear. I'll see you some other time, and please greet your mother for me. Callista nodded, grateful yet still shaken by the incident, Thank you, ma'am, I will. As Belinda made her way back to the car, she saw that Jessica had already stormed off, walking quickly down the road toward their house. Belinda sighed and drove slowly to catch up. When she pulled up beside her daughter, she rolled down the window and said, "Jessica, get in the car." Jessica didn't even slow her pace. Her face was flushed with anger, and her voice was sharp when she replied, "No, Mom, I think you've found yourself a new daughter. Since you clearly prefer her over me, why don't you just keep her? Just give me my space." With that, she quickened her steps, leaving Belinda behind. Jessica reached the house, slammed the door behind her, and ran straight to her room. Locking the door, she began pacing back and forth, her mind filled with resentment. "What nonsense is this?" she fumed. "I'm not sharing this estate with that poor girl. She doesn't belong here. I'll make sure she leaves, one way or another." Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. "Whoever it is, stop banging on my door," she shouted. Outside, Belinda stood, her face lined with frustration. "Jessica, it's me. Open the door." "I don't care," Jessica yelled from inside. "Just leave me alone. There's no way I'm going to share my mother with that poor, nobody girl." Belinda's voice remained calm. "Jessica, there's something important I need to tell you. Please, open the door." Reluctantly, Jessica unlocked the door and stood by it, her arms crossed. "Fine, Mom, I'm listening. Say what you need to say and make it quick." Belinda sighed, stepping inside the room. She looked at her daughter with a mixture of sadness and concern. "My darling," she began, "life is not constant. The poor today might be the rich tomorrow, and you never know how fate might turn. That's why we must always treat people well, no matter where they come from." Jessica's face twisted in disgust. "God forbid I ever need help from someone like her," she retorted. "My father has more than enough money for us, and there's nothing he can't afford. I have everything I need, so why would I ever worry about people like her?" Belinda nodded slowly. "You're right, Jessica. Your father and I work very hard to make sure you're comfortable, but money isn't everything. Life has a way of humbling us, and it's important to treat everyone with kindness and respect. You never know when you might need someone's help, no matter their status." Jessica glared at her mother, defiant. "That girl is still going to leave this estate, Mom. If I don't make her leave, then she regret ever staying. The battle lines have been drawn, and trust me, I'm going to win." Belinda looked at her daughter for a long moment, her heart heavy. "Jessica," she said softly, "I can't force you to change your mind, but I hope you'll think about what I've said." She paused before adding, "See you at dinner." Without another word, Belinda left the room, closing the door behind her. Jessica stood still for a moment, her mind racing, her anger still simmering. But as the silence settled, her thoughts began to churn. What if her mother was right? What if things didn't always stay the way they were? She hissed and said, "Never. My mom was not saying the truth. I have it all." Callista sat on the floor of their small, worn-out shelter, her body shaking with sobs as she tried to process the humiliation she had just endured. Tears streamed down her face, her chest tight with frustration and sorrow. When her mother, Nina, returned from scavenging for recyclables, Callista couldn't hold it in any longer. "Mom," Callista cried, her voice breaking, "is this how we're going to live forever? Stuck in this tiny, broken-down shelter, getting humiliated every day? How much longer can we keep living like this?" Nina looked at her daughter with concern, noticing the pain etched on her young face. "What happened this time, Callista?" she asked gently. With tears still flowing, Callista recounted the awful encounter with Jessica, detailing how the rich girl had belittled her and demanded that she kneel in public to apologize. "Mom, I can't take it anymore," Callista sobbed, her voice trembling with desperation. "We have to leave this place. I can't stand being treated like this, like I'm less than nothing." Nina sighed deeply, her heart heavy with both sympathy and determination. She reached out, gently lifting her daughter's chin to meet her eyes. "Callista, I've told you so many times, never let anyone make you feel small or worthless. You have to believe in yourself, no matter what. This is not the real you, my daughter. The real you is beautiful, strong, destined for greatness. You're only going through a process." Callista shook her head, her frustration bubbling over. "Mom, please stop trying to make me feel better with those words. You're just deceiving me. Life isn't fair to us. How can you say I'm great or wealthy when we're stuck living like this?" Nina's expression hardened, and she raised her hand to silence her daughter. "Stop speaking negativity into your life, Callista. Do not let today's pain define your future. Life is hard right now, yes, but things will get better. You must have faith and patience. Everything will change when the time is right, but you have to keep believing that you are more than your current circumstances." Callista wiped her tears, trying to find comfort in her mother's words, though doubt still lingered in her heart. "But Mom, when will that time come? I'm tired of waiting." Nina smiled gently, tucking a loose strand of hair behind Callista's ear. "Soon, my child, soon. But for now, let's focus on today. I managed to sell the bottles I found, and with the money, I bought some gori and vegetables. Let's make dinner." At that, Callista's face softened, her hunger momentarily overpowering her sadness. "Thank you, Mom. I don't know what I'd do without you. Let's hurry up and cook. I'm starving." Nina stood up, reaching out to help Callista to her feet. "That's my girl," she said with a smile. "No matter what happens, we'll get through it together. We may not have much now, but we have each other, and that's more important than anything." As the two of them worked side by side, preparing the simple meal, Callista couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Despite the harshness of their lives, her mother's strength gave her something to hold on to. Maybe, just maybe, things would get better one day. The next morning, as Jessica's driver was taking her to school, they passed by Callista's spot in the estate, where she was outside sweeping the front of their little home. Just as Callista finished sweeping a small patch of dirt, a burst of cold water splashed onto her. Startled, she looked up to see Jessica sitting smugly in the passenger seat of her car, laughing scornfully as the vehicle slowed down just enough for her to gloat. "This is just the beginning, Callista," Jessica sneered from the car window before it sped off down the street. Callista stood frozen, her clothes drenched, her heart heavy with humiliation. She watched the car disappear, her vision blurring as tears welled up in her eyes. She couldn't understand why Jessica took such pleasure in tormenting her. As her tears fell freely, she wiped her face with her sleeve, wondering how long she could endure the relentless cruelty. 2 days later, Callista and her mother, Nina, were busy packing empty bottles into a large sack, preparing them for sale as part of their recycling efforts, when a nylon bag suddenly came flying out of a passing car, landing at their feet with a loud thud. Callista and Nina looked up in shock. Once again, it was Jessica's car. Her driver had slowed down just enough for Jessica to hurl the bag at them, a smirk of satisfaction on her face. "You both don't belong here," Jessica called out from the car window, her voice filled with venom. "I'll make sure you understand that soon enough." As the car sped away, Nina quickly picked up the nylon bag and opened it. To her horror, the contents spilled out. Rotten fish and meat, reeking so badly that the foul odor immediately filled the air. Both Nina and Callista instinctively covered their noses, recoiling from the stench. Nina shook her head in disbelief. Why is this girl doing this? Where on earth is she getting this garbage to throw at us? Callista, disgusted and frustrated, replied, Mom, maybe we should leave this estate. I don't know how much more of this I can take. But Nina's response was firm. No, Callista, we can't leave. The opportunity to find recyclables is better here because we live near the wealthy. If we move somewhere else, it'll be much harder to survive. We just have to endure. Callista nodded reluctantly, knowing her mother was right, but the thought of staying in a place where they were constantly tormented weighed heavily on her. But that rich girl, Mom, she's determined to make our lives miserable. Nina sighed, placing a hand on Callista's shoulder. Let's just ignore her, my dear. People like that will never be satisfied, no matter what we do. Our focus should be on surviving and making ends meet. We can't waste our energy on her cruelty. But ignoring Jessica wasn't easy. Every day, she found new ways to harass Callista and Nina. Whether it was throwing trash at them, shouting insults from her car, or sending her driver to deliver mocking messages. Jessica's bullying became a constant, daily reminder of their struggle. Each day brought a new humiliation, but Nina remained steadfast, determined not to let Jessica's actions break their spirit. A few weeks later, on a quiet Saturday morning, Jessica and her mother, Belinda, were walking down the street for their regular exercise. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft golden glow over the neighborhood. As they neared Callista's home, they spotted Callista and Nina outside, busy with their usual work, packing empty bottles into a large sack. Suddenly, a strange sound caught Callista and Nina's attention. They looked up just in time to see Jessica collapse onto the pavement. Her body went limp, and she hit the ground hard, causing her mother, Belinda, to cry out in panic. Help! Someone help! Belinda screamed, her voice frantic with fear. Without hesitation, Nina and Callista rushed over to where Jessica lay. Nina quickly bent down beside the unconscious girl, her years of experience with similar situations kicking in. As she gently lifted Jessica's head, she noticed something alarming. Foam was bubbling from Jessica's mouth. Nina's heart sank. Madam, is your daughter epileptic? She asked, her voice calm but serious. This looks like the symptoms of an epileptic seizure, if I'm not mistaken. Belinda, her face pale and her hands trembling, shook her head vehemently. No, just help me lift her up. We need to get her to the hospital, she cried, desperate to save her daughter. Nina tuned to Belinda to steady her. The hospital can only do so much for epilepsy, and they may not be able to cure it completely, she said softly. But I can help your daughter overcome this, completely. Belinda's eyes widened with disbelief and desperation, tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. This isn't the first time this has happened, she whispered, her voice breaking. Jessica had her first seizure when she was just 3 years old. I was so terrified that day, I thought I was going to lose her. But somehow she recovered, and the doctors assured me it was just a one-time thing. Belinda wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, struggling to keep her composure as she continued. When she turned 6, we threw her a big birthday party. All her friends were there, and everything was perfect. But in the middle of the celebration, while she was dancing with her friends, she collapsed again, just like this. Belinda's voice cracked as she relived the memory. She was in the hospital for a week, and after that, we took her abroad for more advanced treatment. We spent a fortune on her care. Since then, there hasn't been any sign of it. I thought she was cured. Nina listened intently, her heart aching for Belinda. I'm so sorry for what you've gone through, she said softly. But please, trust me when I say I can help your daughter. My late husband was epileptic. It ran in his family's blood. After we got married, we searched everywhere for a solution. Doctors couldn't help much, but eventually, we were introduced to some traditional herbs. Nina paused, glancing at Jessica, who was still unconscious, then continued. I prepared those herbs for him, and after several treatments, he was completely healed. I've helped 6 other people since then, and each one was cured of their epilepsy. The herbs worked for my husband, and they worked for others. Belinda stared at Nina, torn between skepticism and hope. But how do you know it will work for Jessica? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nina nodded solemnly. I carry those herbs with me everywhere, just in case, she explained. I was always worried my daughter might inherit it, since it runs in my husband's family, and every child in his family had it. But somehow, my daughter was spared. Nina smiled gently, her voice full of reassurance. It's amazing, but Jessica can be healed too. Just give me a chance to help her. Belinda looked down at her daughter, her heart breaking at the sight of Jessica's fragile, unconscious form. The memory of all the sleepless nights, the hospital visits, and the fear of losing her child washed over her. She knew they had done everything the doctors recommended, but now, here she was again, watching helplessly as her daughter suffered. With tears still flowing down her face, Belinda took a deep breath and looked Nina in the eyes. Please, do whatever you can to help her, she whispered, her voice full of hope and desperation. I just want my daughter to be well. Nina nodded firmly. We'll start right away. Let's get her home and I'll prepare the herbs. Together, they carefully lifted Jessica, and Nina gently backed her as they made their way to Belinda's house. Callista followed closely, her heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and awe. She had never seen her mother in this light, so composed, confident, and full of knowledge. It filled her with a deep sense of pride and hope. For the first time in a long while, Callista believed her mother had the power to truly help someone, even save a life. When they reached the house, they laid Jessica down on her bed, her face still pale and her body weak from the seizure. Callista took a seat beside her, keeping a close eye on her condition while Nina went to the kitchen to prepare the herbs. Belinda, still shaken but hopeful, stood quietly by, watching Nina as she carefully measured and mixed the herbs with the practiced precision of someone who had done this many times before. Are you sure this will work? Belinda asked hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. Nina nodded with quiet assurance. I've seen these herbs work miracles. Trust me, she'll be fine. When Nina was finished preparing the mixture, they both walked into Jessica's room. The room was silent except for the soft, shallow breaths coming from Jessica as she lay unconscious. Nina sat beside her, gently lifting her head and using a teaspoon to slowly administer the herbal remedy. She placed each spoonful carefully into Jessica's mouth, massaging her throat to help her swallow. Callista watched with bated breath, hoping against hope that her mother's treatment would work. After just a few minutes, Jessica suddenly sneezed, and her eyelids fluttered open. Her eyes were groggy, and her body still weak, but she was conscious. Nina continued to give her the herbs, reassuring Belinda with every step. She's waking up, Callista whispered in awe, her heart swelling with relief. Jessica's gaze shifted lazily around the room before her eyes closed again, and she drifted off into a deep sleep. Let her rest, Nina said, her voice calm and confident. She sleep for about 3 hours, and when she wakes up, give her a normal meal. After she eats, she should take 6 teaspoons of the herbal mixture. Do this for 3 days, and I promise you, she will never experience another seizure. Belinda's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of overwhelming gratitude. She couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. Her daughter, whom she had feared might be lost to another terrible attack, was now resting peacefully. She looked at Nina, a woman she had once barely noticed, and saw her in a completely new light. As Nina and Callista began to gather their things to leave, Belinda shook her head, stepping forward to stop them. "You're going nowhere," she said firmly, her voice resolute. "I can't let you go back to the streets, not after what you've done for my daughter." Nina looked at her, surprised by the sudden turn of events. "Madam, I appreciate your kindness, but we used to where we stay." "No," Belinda interrupted, her voice soft but firm. "Never again. My husband is away on an international business trip, but he'll be back tomorrow. Until then, you and Callista can stay in our boys' quarters. I want you here to monitor Jessica's health closely. You've already done so much, but please, stay with us." Nina exchanged a glance with Callista, who was beaming with a mix of surprise and joy. They hadn't expected this. From the humiliation they faced just weeks ago, to now being offered shelter and gratitude from the very family they once feared, it felt surreal. "Madam, I don't know what to say," Nina began, her voice thick with emotion. "Say yes," Belinda said with a warm smile. "You've given me hope and saved my daughter. It's the least I can do." Nina and Callista were both overwhelmed with gratitude, hardly able to believe the turn their lives had just taken. With tears of joy in her eyes, Callista nodded eagerly. "Thank you, Mum, we'll stay." As they left Jessica's room to settle in the boys' quarters, Belinda followed them, offering her continued thanks. "We'll discuss everything when my husband returns tomorrow, but for now, please make yourselves comfortable. And once again, thank you." Nina smiled softly. "It's our pleasure, madam. We're just glad we could help." Callista returned to Jessica's room, just as her mother had instructed, watching over the girl who had been so cruel to her only days before. As she sat at her bedside, she was hoping and praying that she gets better and completely healed, just as her mother had said. But as Jessica's eyes fluttered open, Callista could see the confusion and frustration building in them. Jessica blinked a few times before realizing who was sitting beside her. "Mom," Jessica screamed, her voice filled with both fear and disgust. Startled by the sudden outburst, Callista quickly stood up and ran out to get Belinda. Within moments, Belinda rushed into the room, relief flooding her face. "Thank God you're awake," she said, her voice full of gratitude, "just as Nina said you would be." Callista nodded. But Jessica wasn't listening, her face twisted in anger as she cut her mother off. "Mom, what's the meaning of this? Why would you let a stranger into my room? You even let her sit on my bed. This is so disgusting." Jessica spat out, her voice dripping with contempt. Belinda froze, unsure of how to respond. She hadn't expected Jessica to react like this before she could find the right words. Nina walked in, carrying a tray with Jessica's food. She calmly instructed Callista to bring in a small stool where she could place the tray. Jessica's eyes widened with disbelief as she watched Nina and Callista move around the room. "Mom, what are you doing?" she said, her voice rising in anger. "You've turned our house into some kind of shelter for lowlifes. We shouldn't have anything to do with these people, let alone let them into my room." Belinda took a deep breath, trying to remain calm despite Jessica's harsh words. "Jessica, these people saved your life. If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be here right now." "God forbid," Jessica shouted, her face red with fury. "I don't care what they did. I don't want them here. I don't want them anywhere near me. Mom, ask them to leave my room now. Or. Jessica's voice trembled with rage, and Nina, sensing the situation was escalating, quickly grabbed Callista's hand. "Come on, Callista," she whispered, hurrying her daughter out of the room before things got worse. Belinda stood frozen for a moment, watching them leave, her heart heavy. She quickly followed them out, her eyes filled with guilt. "Nina, Callista, I'm so sorry. Please, just go back to the boys' quarters for now. I'll come and see you later," she pleaded. Nina nodded silently, her expression unreadable, and gently guided Callista back to their temporary room. Belinda returned to Jessica's room, feeling torn between her daughter's anger and her gratitude toward the very people who had saved her. "Jessica," she began carefully, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "You don't understand what happened. You collapsed out there on the street, and Nina knew exactly what to do. She treated you when no one else could. That's why you're still here." But Jessica wasn't listening. She had already made up her mind. "I don't care what they did. I don't want them here, and I don't want them touching my things. They shouldn't be anywhere near me," she said defiantly, crossing her arms. Belinda sighed, realizing how deep Jessica's resentment ran. "They'll leave after your treatment is finished, but for now, they're staying so they can help monitor your recovery." Jessica hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. "Fine, but I don't want them in my room again, and I don't want them touching my food either. I can't stand their presence." Belinda nodded, trying to keep the peace, even though it pained her to see her daughter, so blinded by pride and prejudice. "All right, sweetheart. I'll make sure they don't come in here again." As Belinda left the room, her heart ached. She knew she had to find a way to open Jessica's eyes to the kindness that had been shown to her, but for now, she had to focus on keeping her daughter calm and healthy. The next day, Jessica was overjoyed when she saw her father walk through the front door. "Dad, I missed you so much. Thank God you're back," she exclaimed, running into his arms. Smith smiled warmly as he hugged his daughter. "I missed you too, sweetheart," he said. But as he pulled back, he noticed the subtle exchange between Jessica and her mother, Belinda, who was watching their interaction with a knowing look. "Mom, why are you staring at me like that? You know exactly what I mean," Jessica said, her tone filled with an underlying meaning that Smith couldn't quite grasp. Smith raised an eyebrow, glancing at Belinda. "Is there something I should know?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. Belinda sighed softly, giving a small nod. "Let's go upstairs and talk," she said. "You need to relax first, and I'll explain everything." A few hours later, after Smith had rested from his trip, he and Belinda sat down in the sitting room, joined by Nina and Callista. The atmosphere was a mix of gratitude and tension. Smith began, his voice sincere. "Thank you so much for what you did, Nina. You saved my daughter, and I can't express how much I appreciate it." Nina smiled humbly, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "You're very welcome, sir. It was the least I could do, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to help. May God continue to bless you and your family." Smith exchanged a glance with Belinda, who nodded in agreement. "My wife and I have discussed this," Smith continued, "and we've decided to engage your services here in our home. We'd like to register Callista in school, and you can continue working with us as well." Belinda added with a kind smile, "You've been through so much, and we want to help. Please consider this a fresh start." Nina's eyes filled with tears of relief and joy. "Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. You've saved us from so much hardship. I'm truly grateful." Belinda reached out and touched Nina's arm gently. "I also want to apologize for Jessica's behavior towards you and Callista. She's still young, but I believe she come around. I hope so." Nina nodded. "I understand. It takes time. 4 days later, Belinda was getting ready to drop Jessica and Callista at school. "Jessica, hurry up. You're going to be late," she called from downstairs. Jessica descended the stairs, her face set in a scowl. "Mom, I'm not riding in the same car as that girl," she hissed. "I won't lower myself to her level. I'd rather go in my car." Belinda sighed, her patience wearing thin. "Jessica, I have to be at school today for Callista's first day. After today, Rex, your driver, will be taking both of you to school, but today, you'll ride with me." Jessica's face twisted in anger. "Mom, absolutely not. God forbid that I share a car with her. It's already humiliating enough that you've put her in my school, but to think of sharing my car with her. That's impossible. I won't stand for it." Belinda stood there, trying to hold her composure as Jessica stormed past her, calling for her driver. "Rex, take me to school now," she demanded, walking out of the house without looking back. Belinda watched her daughter leave, disbelief and sadness filling her heart. She couldn't understand where all this hatred was coming from. After a moment, she turned to Callista, who had been waiting quietly by the door. "Come on, Callista. I'll take you to school." Callista nodded shyly, following Belinda to the car. As they drove in silence, Belinda couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment. Jessica's attitude had grown worse, and despite all their efforts, she hadn't softened. From that day on, either Smith or Belinda made sure to personally drop Callista off at school, while Jessica insisted on taking her own car, refusing to share the same space with her. Jessica's hostile attitude toward Callista only worsened with each passing day. Despite this, Smith and Belinda found themselves growing fonder of Callista, drawn to her intelligence and sense of humor. She had become a bright presence in their lives, and they enjoyed spending time with her. Jessica, however, couldn't stand the growing bond between her parents and the girl she despised. One fateful afternoon, Callista was in the compound, carefully trimming the flowers. As she focused on her task, she suddenly froze in fear. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a large snake slithering beside her. Panic overtook her, and without thinking, she bolted toward the open gate, desperate to escape. In her terror, she didn't realize that Smith was just pulling into the driveway. Smith saw Callista running toward the car and slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The car hit her. A wave of fear washed over Smith as he jumped out of the car. The gateman, seeing the accident unfold, quickly carried Callista into the back seat of the car for immediate medical attention. Smith's hands trembled as he rushed to drive her to the hospital. Meanwhile, Jessica approached the spot where Callista had been, a scornful smirk spreading across her face. "Why would she run away from my toy?" she said, gripping a plastic snake in her hand. "It's just my snake toy." Belinda, who had witnessed the entire incident, hissed in frustration at her daughter. "Jessica, this is no time for your games." At that moment, Nina came running toward the gate, her heart pounding. my daughter," she cried, her voice filled with desperation. Belinda quickly jumped into her car and called for Nina to join her. "Let's go to the hospital together," she urged. Jessica, with a sly smile still on her face, demanded to come along. "I'll come too," she said, her tone disturbingly calm. As Belinda drove toward the hospital, her worrying for Callista overtook her. "Jessica," she said through clenched teeth, "you better start praying that nothing happens to Callista. If anything does—" Jessica, unfazed, shrugged. "I don't know why she was running from my toy snake. I told you before, she doesn't belong here." Nina, trying to hold back tears, cut in. "Ma, please drive faster. I need to see my daughter." When they arrived at the hospital, they found Smith pacing anxiously in the waiting room, sweat dripping down his face. Nina and Belinda rushed toward him. "How is she?" Belinda asked, her voice filled with concern. Smith wiped his forehead and took a deep breath. "The doctors are working on her. She's lost a lot of blood, but they're doing everything they can." As they spoke, the doctor emerged from the emergency room, his face serious. "Who are the parents of the child?" he asked. Nina rushed forward, her voice trembling. "Her father is late, but I'm her mother." The doctor nodded, his expression urgent. "She's lost a significant amount of blood, and we need to perform a blood transfusion immediately." Without hesitation, Nina stepped forward. "I'll donate my blood," she said. Smith and Belinda both chimed in as well. "We'll donate too, if needed." The doctor hesitated for a moment. Typically, the parent's blood is a better match for the child. It has the best chance of saving her life. Let's start with the mother. Nina was quickly ushered into a room to have her blood tested. Meanwhile, Jessica moved closer to her parents, her voice dripping with disdain. "See, no matter how hard you try to help a low-life person, there's always a boundary. Calista doesn't belong here, and this whole situation proves it. This is my space, not hers." Belinda's anger flared, her eyes narrowed at Jessica, but before she could respond, Nina emerged from the testing room, her face streaked with tears. The doctor followed her, his expression grim. "Her blood doesn't match," the doctor said gravely. "We need to act quickly, but her chances are diminishing." Smith and Belinda, both desperate, stepped forward. "Please take our blood samples," they said in unison. "We'll do anything to help." The doctor paused before nodding, but not before instructing Nina, "If you can, try to contact any relatives from the father's side. There may be a better match there." Nina shook her head, her voice trembling. "It would take nearly 2 days for me to reach them and bring them back. We don't have that kind of time." Smith, his voice thick with emotion, pleaded with the doctor. "Do whatever it takes, just save her." The doctor, realizing the urgency, nodded and took Smith and Belinda to have their blood tested. Minutes felt like hours as they waited for the results. Jessica, staying off to the side, wore an indifferent expression, her arms crossed. Belinda couldn't believe the coldness her daughter was displaying in such a dire moment. She wanted to reprimand her, but her focus was on Callista's survival. When the doctor finally returned, holding the test results in his hand, the room fell silent. Everyone held their breath, hoping for good news. The doctor smiled warmly and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Smith, your blood matched perfectly with Callista's. Please, follow me to the lab, so we can proceed with the transfusion." As soon as they left the waiting room, Jessica moved closer to Nina, her eyes cold and filled with disdain. "What more do you want from my parents?" she hissed. "They've given you shelter, food, clothes, money, and now even their blood. What's next? Will you ask for their lives too?" Nina, unfazed, smiled gently and replied, "Living is giving, my dear. When you stop giving, you stop living. I appreciate everything your family has done for me and my daughter." Jessica sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. "Spare me your gratitude. Are you not ashamed of yourself? The doctor needed only one thing from you to save your child, and you couldn't even provide it. You're not just poor financially, even the blood in your veins is worthless." Just as Jessica's harsh words hung in the air, Smith and Belinda returned, smiling. "Callista is going to be fine," Smith announced. "The doctors have started her treatment." Nina, tears welling up in her eyes, nodded gratefully. "Thank you so much, sir, ma'am, you've done so much for us." A few hours later, the doctor approached the waiting room once again. "Callista is awake and responding very well," he said. Nina immediately asked, "Can we see her now?" The doctor nodded. You can see her in about an hour. In the meantime, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I need to speak with you in my office. Smith, his brow furrowed with concern, asked, Doctor, is everything okay? Belinda added, her voice filled with urgency, please, do whatever it takes to save that child. If necessary, we'll fly her out of the country. Just save her. The doctor smiled reassuringly. Callista is responding well to the treatment. But there's something I need to discuss with you. Once inside his office, the doctor looked at Smith and Belinda carefully. Who are Callista's real parents? He asked, his tone serious. Belinda chuckled nervously. Why are you asking us that? You know the answer. The doctor hesitated, then said, I was surprised when both of your blood matched Callista's, but Nina's didn't. So, out of curiosity, I conducted a DNA test, and the results were unexpected. Smith leaned forward, his concern deepening. What are you saying, doctor? The doctor took a deep breath and said, the DNA test revealed that both of you are biologically related to Callista, but Nina is not. The real question is, have you ever lost a child? Belinda's face turned pale as she processed the information. I've only been pregnant once, and that was with Jessica. It was, in this very hospital, that I gave birth to her. Smith, equally confused, added, we picked Nina up from the streets to help her and her daughter. But now, I'm wondering where this mix-up could have happened. The doctor, silent for a moment, finally spoke. Do you know where Nina gave birth? Belinda shook her head. We don't know much about her past, but maybe you can ask her yourself. Dr. Martin sighed. Okay, but before that, I think I should run a DNA test on Jessica as well. Smith nodded in agreement. Yes, please. Go ahead and conduct the test. Dr. Martin left the office to proceed with the test on Jessica, leaving Smith and Belinda in a state of shock and confusion. An hour later, the doctor returned, his expression grim but determined. Belinda immediately asked, Doctor, how did it go? The doctor remained silent for a few moments, tapping his pen against his desk. Finally, he spoke. Jessica is not your biological daughter. Callista is. Smith and Belinda stared at him, utterly stunned. What do you mean? Jessica is not our child, Belinda whispered, her voice shaky. The doctor continued. It appears that Jessica and Callista were switched at birth. Jessica is Nina's biological daughter, while Callista is yours. Unable to process the revelation, Smith ran his hands through his hair, trying to piece together the puzzle. How is this even possible? He asked. I'm going to ask Nina some questions, Dr. Martin said. He called for a nurse to bring Nina into the office. When Nina entered, she looked around the room. Is something wrong? She asked, addressing Smith and Belinda. Callista is doing better now, isn't she? The couple nodded, unable to find the words. Dr. Martin began. Nina, I need you to answer some questions honestly. Where were you living before you moved in with Mr. and Mrs. Smith? Nina nodded. Before I ended up on the streets, I lived at Marco's estate with my late husband. Dr. Martins nodded. Marco estate. Just a stone throw from here. Nina responded, yes, that was my former address. Where did you give birth to your daughter? The doctor asked. I gave birth to her here, in this hospital, about 12 years ago, Nina replied. Dr. Akin, my husband's friend, was the one that handled my delivery, after which he moved abroad. Smith and Belinda exchanged glances. The doctor continued, Jessica and Callista were born the same day, in this very hospital. After looking into the records, I believe there was a mix-up. Callista and Jessica were switched at birth. Nina's face turned pale as the weight of the doctor's words sank in. Switched at birth, she whispered. Are you saying that Jessica is my daughter? The doctor handed her the DNA results. Nina scanned them, tears streaming down her face. I've been living on the streets for over 6 years. After my husband passed away, his family accused me of infidelity because Callista didn't have the epilepsy that runs in their family. They took everything from me and threw me and my daughter out. Smith and Belinda listened intently, their hearts heavy with the unfolding truth. Nina continued, her voice trembling. Jessica is truly my daughter. And I was the one who cured her epilepsy. Belinda's voice cracked as she spoke. It was fate that brought us together. Nina nodded, her eyes filled with tears. Yes, it was fate. But now we must decide how to move forward. Callista spent a full week in the hospital, recovering under the careful watch of the medical team, with both Nina and the Smiths by her side. When they finally returned home, life seemed to go back to its strange normal. Nina and Callista continued to live in the boys' quarters as before. And Jessica's hostility only grew more intense. Her anger was like a festering wound, poisoning her every interaction with Nina and Callista. Meanwhile, Smith and Belinda kept treating everyone with kindness, waiting for the right moment to break the news to the children. One quiet evening, Smith and Belinda decided that the time had come. They invited both girls, along with Nina, for an informal gathering in the garden. The sun was setting, casting a soft golden glow over the flowers, and the breeze was warm. As soon as Jessica spotted Nina and Callista approaching, her face twisted into a scowl. Dad, she snapped, her voice dripping with disdain. Do we have to keep treating these lowlifes like they're part of our family? They're getting too comfortable, and it's time they remembered their place. Smith, ever calm, simply smiled and ignored her outburst. Belinda cleared her throat, signaling that the discussion was about to begin. Jessica, Callista, she began, her voice soft but firm. What we're about to tell you is something you need to listen to carefully. We've waited for the right time, and that time is now. No matter what happens next, I want both of you to know that this will always be your home. Jessica hissed. That is not possible. This place can never be their home. We have tolerated them enough. Smith chimed in, his tone serious. We've recently uncovered something that none of us could have ever imagined. It turns out that when both of you were born, there was a mix-up at the hospital. The nurses accidentally exchanged you at birth. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, the weight of them slowly sinking into everyone present. The truth is, Smith continued, Jessica, Nina is your biological mother, and Callista is our biological daughter. It was confirmed through medical tests. That's why the doctors took your blood samples. And it also turns out that the epilepsy you suffered from was passed down through your father's family. This mix-up, this terrible mistake, is no one's fault. But now, we have to face the truth. Jessica shot up from her seat, her face twisted in fury. I knew it. I knew one day that woman and her daughter would try to take everything from me. They want our lives, our house, everything we've worked for. This is a scam, a trick. Jessica, Smith said gently, trying to calm her. I understand how you feel. This is difficult, but it's not a scam. It's the truth. Your mother is Nina, but you are still a part of this family. We love you deeply, and nothing is going to change that. You will always have a place here. Jessica wasn't convinced. She crossed her arms defiantly. I don't care what you say. I won't accept it. This is my life, my home. I don't want anything to do with them. Meanwhile, Callista sat quietly beside Nina, her small hands gripping her mother tightly. I'm not letting go, Callista whispered softly, tears welling in her eyes. I don't care what anyone says. This is my mother, the only one I've ever known. I don't want anything to change. Nina, her eyes glistening with tears, gently stroked Callista's hair. I know, my darling, she said, her voice breaking. This is hard for all of us, but the truth has to come out. You will always have me, no matter what. Smith, sensing the emotional weight of the moment, continued. For the sake of both of you, and for your peace of mind, we have decided that it's best if we all part ways for now. But that doesn't mean we can't visit each other or stay in each other's lives. We'll always be here for you. Belinda, who had been holding a file in her lap, handed it over to Nina. Inside this folder, she explained, are the documents to 2 houses in Caius Estate, and also the paperwork for 2 brand new cars in your name. We want to make sure you and Jessica are well taken care of. Additionally, as a barrister, I will do everything in my power to reclaim your late husband's properties from his family. You deserve justice. Nina, overwhelmed by the generosity and kindness, nodded tearfully. I don't know how to thank you enough, she said, her voice choked with emotion. I have no words. You've done more for me than I could ever repay. Belinda smiled warmly. You've taken care of our daughter all these years without even knowing it. We are forever grateful, and remember, this will always be your second home. 3 days later, Nina and Jessica packed their things and moved into their new home at Caius. Despite the comfortable new surroundings, the tension between mother and daughter remained thick. Jessica, still bitter about the revelation, found it impossible to accept Nina as her mother, while Nina patiently hoped that, in time, her daughter's heart would soften. Meanwhile, Callista quickly adapted to her new life with the Smiths. Though the reality of the switch was still fresh in everyone's minds, she bonded deeply with her biological parents, and they embraced her fully. Slowly but surely, she was learning to live without Nina constantly by her side, though she made sure to visit her often. So, my besties, what are the moral lessons you took from this story? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below, in your own language, and please specify your country as well. My quick advice. Life's journey is complex and involves different experiences. Let's all learn to treat people well. Life is not constant.